Hello there and welcome back. My name is Doug. Thanks for joining me with another fountain pen related video. This one is an experiment. I have a couple of pens that I've struggled with. The one is my Moonman M600. This was a very pricey pen because it came with a German Schmidt nib, which I didn't like from the get-go, and I swapped it out a couple of times. It's now got a Moonman nib in it, but I'm not happy with that either. This is my latest Moonman M600S. I love this beauty of this pen, and it came with a number 6 Moonman Gold nib, and while it's okay, it's not stellar, it's not terrific, and so I'm not writing with this pen as much as I think I should be. Plus, I've been gushing about this pen. This is the Pen BBS 480 Galaxy, and this has a Pen BBS fine nib, which has that mini Fude type upturned tip. And I'm loving this nib in all of my Pen BBS pens that have this nib, this one especially. And I found that Bobby on eBay, and he is Office Supply Pen on eBay as a seller, and he also sells on Etsy, and I'll put both those addresses up here on the screen. But he sells this bent nib, what he calls a bent nib fine, and it looks almost identical to the Pen BBS nib. It's a number 6, and he's been selling these on eBay to fit the M600S pen from Moonman. So if that nib writes like my Pen BBS, then I decided, well, that'll improve these two pens. So I'm going to do a nib swap from the two Moonman nibs that are on these two pens and try the Bobby bent nib on those two pens. I've already swapped one in my Moonman C1, which came with a standard silver Moonman nib, which again was okay, but I decided to try the bent nib, so I bought this one, swapped out this nib, and it just is amazing now. It's a gusher, and it is smooth, smooth, smooth. And since this is a Moonman pen, I thought, well, maybe that nib will fit these two pens as well. And the problem being that the M600 is slightly different than the M600S. Because it had a German Schmidt nib, it came with this nib here. This is a fine point German Schmidt, and it had this feed with it. And the feed and the nib are slightly different than what's in the M600S. So I'm going to be interested to see what the differences are between these nibs. Now, I've measured out Pen BBS. Here is a medium Pen BBS nib, and the, what's it called? Shui Yao. I think it's called Shui Yao. Let's see if we can focus on that. Shui Yao. The bent nib from Bobby, and the Schmidt, and a standard number 6 Fully Wen that Bobby sends. Here's the gold Fully Wen. There it is. I've measured those nibs out, and they're all slightly different. And I've got measurements for a Yovo nib, which is the one that Goulet sells. So I'm going to put that chart of measurements up on the screen here so you can see the differences between those 4 nibs. So I'm going to try to do a nib swap here live on camera. We'll see how much I have to edit, but I'm going to try to pull the nib out of this one first. So we'll go with the M600 first, since it's the one I'm most concerned about, and we'll try the first bent nib in this pen and do a writing sample. Okay, back after some surgery. Immediately some problems, and this took I couldn't do this on camera because it would have taken probably 20 minutes of cursing and swearing. So here are the issues. This is the original Schmidt nib and feed that came with the M600. Now the Schmidt nib and feed and the housing that the unit comes in, which is this little collar that's inside here now, is specifically designed for the Schmidt nib. The M600S does not have that type of feed and housing. It has something more similar to this, which is a little bit larger, has a different feed process, I guess, process mechanism. And so that's why Bobby said that these nibs, these bent nibs, number 6, will fit the M600S. He never mentioned the M600 itself. So I thought, well, it'd probably work on this because he said it would. But I thought, well, let's give it a try. I know I had this pen writes with the Schmidt nib and feed in it. Of course, it's designed for it. But I put a Moonman nib on it, on the Schmidt feed, and it didn't work. It wouldn't write at all. So, okay, let's put a Moonman feed on the Moonman nib and put it inside the M600. I did that. It actually wrote, but it really had flow problems. If I tried to push the converter down to feed the feed, to flood the feed with ink, it was like it was really pushing against something. So the issue is this end of the feed, I don't know whether you can see that or not, it's sort of very round there. We got the light there. It's very round and it has a couple of slits, and then it goes to, let me get a pointer here. It goes to this little slit right here. So the ink feeds along these tiny little grooves. On the Schmidt, that is a half circle. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's like a tray rather than a full circle, and with a slot along that, and then it goes into the feed that way. So what I had to do was I used this feed on the Shui Yao Bobby bent nib. Okay, that feed on the Bobby bent nib, and because that back piece there wouldn't allow the ink through that assembly section on the Schmidt, I took my X-Acto knife and I carved a channel along there, right along there. Took about 20 minutes or so of just worrying that out of there, and sort of carved a trough into that to make it look more like that. See how that sort of half, pardon my inky fingers, and it has that little channel down it right there. And then I push this into the Schmidt assembly and put the Shui Yao bent nib inside. Now, it doesn't match because it's not gold, but it writes a lot better. Let me just do a sample here. This ink it's Caroube de Chypre from Jacques Urbain, and I'm going to test this over here. Yes, it's still writing. So this is the Moonman M600, not the M600S, with a Shui Yao, I think that's how you spell it, fine point bobby bent nib. I can't spell. I'm working with my hands, I'm starting to shake. You can see it is slightly upturned on the nib, and it gives you that smooth, glassy feel. And it seems to be not deprived of ink, so that feed seems to be keeping up. It even does reverse writing. It's very smooth. I did do a little bit of spreading. I put a number 003 spark plug gapping tool inside the breather hole and slid it down a couple of times and pushed it side to side. Checked the tines for alignment and really got the feed going nicely. So it's not something that you're going to want to do unless you're good with tools and you have a magnifying glass. But my M600 is now writing very nicely. I'm going to continue writing with it. I haven't been writing with it for months because I couldn't find a right nib combination that worked. So I'm hoping that this nib swap will work a little bit better because it has the same kind of feed that the Shui Yao uses, and the nib housing is the proper one. Let's see with it. This is inked up, so pardon me if I get inky. Pull this out. Oh, I've got the converter attached. Never disassemble this without detaching the converter first. There we go. There. So that comes out. And you can see that this housing here is more like this one and completely different than the Schmidt one. And so that Shui Yao should fit in there. So I'm going to give that a try. I might do that right on camera here because I'm hoping it won't require any surgery. We'll see in a second. Okay, let's give this a try. I've cleaned this out of ink and dried it up, and we're going to demonstrate how to put this number 6 nib on this Moonman M600S. First thing we want to do is get some nib grabber material. I use the little rubber stuff that covers my desk. And you can do one of two things with these M600Ss. You can pull the nib straight out of the nib assembly and then just push the new one in. But I want to show you how the nib assembly unscrews. So I'm just holding by the shoulders here so that I don't squish the feed. And I'm going to give it a turn. and the whole nib assembly comes out. Now you can get these entire nib assemblies with different kinds of nibs, number 6. I know Bobby sells them on eBay, and I believe he sells them on his Etsy site as well. So you can get different kinds of, I know you can get a fully wen, medium nib, and things like that. But in this case, I'm going to be putting this nib in, and it does not come with a nib assembly like this. You have to watch out that, did I lose the, nope. There's a little rubber gasket or a silicone gasket there, and another one right there. Make sure that they're there. Sometimes you lose them inside the barrel. But in order to be able to pull on this a little bit easier, I'm going to screw it back into the grip section. Again, being very careful not to squeeze too hard. There we go. And that'll give me a little bit more to pull against. So now I'm just going to grab by the shoulders and pull straight out. And the entire feed and nib assembly comes out. Sorry, the entire feed and nib comes out. Still a little bit of ink on there. So there's the Moonman Gold that came with the pen. And here's the Moonman feed. Pretty typical. I'm going to line this up so that the edges of this are almost touching the edges of the nib. I'm going to hold it right there on the angle where there are no fins. And you're going to find there's a little flat spot right there that lines up with the flat spot right there. So it's keyed. It only goes in one way. Now, as I'm doing this, I get my grip material. It felt like the feed went in a little bit further than the nib did. The nib is slightly different size, just slightly different. So I'm going to get the grip material and push on just the shoulders here to seat it all the way as far as I can into that section. It's still not as close as I would like it to be. There's more nib showing there than I'd want. But now we'll have to do the test and see whether in fact this works. I'm going to refill this up with sapphire blue, diamine, and we'll give a writing sample, see if it writes at all. Okay, so I've inked the pen up, and I've done a little bit of a sample, and it wrote right away, which is good. It required a little bit of adjustment of the tines, so I pushed down on the nib a little bit to line them up, and let's see if it writes now. This is the Moonman M600S. This is the Star Blue. And this is a fine Bobby bent nib. This is very wet and has some hard starting issues I'm noticing here, but I'm very pleased that it is writing at all, and it is way superior in my estimation, to the Moonman nib that came with it. So I'm starting to consider, well, maybe I'll buy a few more of these, because if all my Moonman nibs can be improved by putting, or Moonman pens be improved by putting one of these Schmidt nibs in them, and the number 6 size seems to work with that Moonman feed, then I may just do that. The quick brown dog jumps over the lazy fox. Well, this has been fun. I got my fingers inky on a Sunday afternoon, and I had, I think, a very successful time with both of these pens. I've got them both writing to the point where I'm going to start using them more, which is the whole point. So again, thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.